Hello and welcome to today's ScriptRunner live session, Level Up Your IT Automation Game. My name is Heiko Brenn, and in the next 30 minutes, I want to show you how PowerShell and ScriptRunner can help you to automate all kinds of repetitive tasks. And so let's start with a short introduction first. So we're going to cover first the question, why should we worry about level up the IT automation game? Well, number one, you might be sick and tired of too many manual tasks that you have to trigger all day long, and you think about, okay, there should be a better way of doing things. The second one, consistency. Having consistent processes leads to better quality, to standardized approaches to all kinds of tasks that needs to be triggered. Security, of course, is an important topic here. You want to improve, especially when we talk about PowerShell and how credentials should be managed. And then, of course, when things are automated, you can focus on more higher value work. And last but not least, well, we might want to have more fun with our work and not doing the same thing every day, multiple times, clicking through interfaces, stuff like that. Now, when you think about doing this with PowerShell, what might be the case is that maybe your PowerShell landscape looks like this, where each of these tools represents a script that somebody wrote, and they're stored somewhere on local drives, on OneDrives, in emails, and shares, whatever. And the people who wrote the script, they might know where they are and what they do. But when you think about having PowerShell as a foundation of your organizational-wide automation strategy, that might not be the best way of working with PowerShell. So that's where ScriptRunner comes into the picture, where the idea is to change what you see here on the left side into something that is well organized, where you exactly know which script you can use for automate onboardings, spinning up new VMs, changing group memberships, all kinds of things that you maybe already do with PowerShell or you want to do with PowerShell. And this is exactly where, we can help you to make this happen. Now the question is, okay, what do we need? So how can we do that? And from our perspective, it's about starting to centralize all the logistics, if you will, around PowerShell, starting with the scripts and the modules. So they are not all over the place. They're in a proper managed ways. So also if you want to update, you want to change, you want to add scripts, it's done in a central and well-organized way. Then security, of course, you want to have a secure way of managing the credentials that you need to use PowerShell to connect you to your Active Directory, to Office 365, to Azure, to VMware, whatever the platforms might be. And you want to make sure that if you think about delegating tasks based on your scripts to people, it may be in help desk, that of course you don't want to make these people global admin just to enable them to do a password reset or to change a group membership or to create a shared mailbox, for example. So that's something, of course, that also needs to be covered. And then because we're talking about people who are maybe not so much into PowerShell, they're not so really familiar with being on the command line, it needs to be easy. So we're talking about a user-friendly interface. And then not everybody should be able to do everything. So you want to be granular, you want to be flexible. And so that's where we talk about a secure role-based delegation of making sure that the exact right people are able to do the right things based on your underlying PowerShell scripts. And then when you start using and start delegating, one thing that, of course, is always a topic is like, okay, I want to know which script got triggered by which user, by which system, by how long did it take, what have been the parameters. So we're talking about monitoring and reporting and things that you would like to know about the execution of your PowerShell scripts. And that's exactly what we are going to look at. And so with this, I will change to my, so I will switch to my VM right here to walk you through this different aspects of using PowerShell on a level that, as I mentioned earlier, it really can become a foundation of your organizational-wide automation strategy. And as mentioned, it starts with the scripts. So here we are in the portal. I am a ScriptRunner administrator. I have access to all the scripts that are available here on the ScriptRunner server. And I can go into the details. I can see the header information. I can see the code itself. I can check out. I can check in scripts. I can make changes to it. And I can see the change history. I can see what kind of things have been changed compared to a previous version. And I can see where a script is being used at the moment, of course. So that's step one. So working with existing scripts, modifying existing scripts, but then of course it's also about adding new scripts. And so here we can take a look at the possibility where you can say, okay, I want to create a new script, and it can be something you start from scratch, or you have a script that you already use, or you want to make use of our scripts that are published on GitHub. I will put in the link to our GitHub repo later on, where we have about 1,900 scripts for all kinds of platforms, starting with Active Directory, and as you can see, Citrix, Office 365, Azure, VMware, and you can make them become part of your implementation here. And of course, also what you can do, you can use ChatGPT to start creating a new script, saying, okay, I need a script that is going to create a new Active Directory user, for example. And if we are lucky and ChatGPT is in a good mood, we will get some good information back. But as always, and everything that comes out of ChatGPT or other Gen AI solutions, you need to check if does it make sense? Is it hallucinating? Does it come up with some PowerShell command that are not even existing? That things are happening, and also the results may differ anytime you are asking ChatGPT to do something. But the overall idea is that instead of starting with a blank page, you already have a structure. You already have an idea how that script could look like. And so, for example, and you will see this later on when I show you some more examples here, we work with language prefixes. That means if you are in a multi-language scenario, you can use these prefixes to let us know what to display if somebody switches to German, to English, to French, or to Spanish, for example. And as you can see, we already have a synopsis, we have a pattern block, we are using splatting. So it is a nice way of starting, and you get some help from ChatGPT to do whatever you want to do with PowerShell, and maybe with creating a new script. So this is that. So it's about working with your existing scripts, maintaining, modifying existing scripts, but also, of course, create new scripts. Then, of course, we need to have credentials. We need to have credentials to connect to the systems that you want to manage. That could be, again, your Active Directory, your Exchange, Azure, VMware, whatever. And all the credentials can be stored either locally in the Windows Credential Store, or you can use password servers in the background, where ScriptRunner is going to ask for the credential whenever there is a script that wants to connect to a backend system. It could be SSH keys, and we talk about using PowerShell 7, for example, and managing Linux boxes, for example. So, and again, the idea is centralization. So the credentials are stored in a central place in a secure way. And then in the next step, you can create what we call targets. So these are the systems that you want to manage, like your Active Directory, your Exchange Online, your Microsoft Teams, your Azure infrastructure. So targets mean what are the systems that I'm going to manage with PowerShell. And it could be as easy as having a local domain controller where you say, okay, I have a connection I want to use. I want to connect to this domain controller, and I want to use this credential, which refers to the list of credentials we just looked at. So you have a combination of what are you going to connect to, and how can I authenticate? So which credential is being used? And by having this configured means later on, whenever I use this target, ScriptRunner knows what to do, where to connect to, and what credential to be used. If it's something like Exchange Online, for example, it's similar, but here you can select different services from your Office 365 tenant. It could be multiple ones, or just like in my case, it's just one. And again, you decide, do you have a credential to connect to Exchange Online? Do you have a certificate that you want to use for connecting in the background? This is really up to you. And then again, using this target lets ScriptRunner know what to do. So this information doesn't need to be in your scripts anymore, which is, I think, pretty helpful. And also what you can do, you can combine targets into collections, meaning if you have housekeeping processes going on over 50, 60, 70 different boxes, or maybe different tenants, you can combine them into collections. That means if you have to add or remove systems, you just do this in a single place, which is the collection. And then ScriptRunner immediately knows the next time it runs which systems we need to connect to. And then there are queries. Queries are there to help the users to pick and choose from lists that you have prepared based on information from your AD, from MS Graph, from scripts where you pull out data for maybe your HR system or your ITSM system or whatever. So the idea is using queries to, instead of typing by the user, you provide lists, and the list allows you to make sure people are only allowed to work with the right objects, meaning what kind of users, what kind of machines, what kind of tenants people should be allowed to pick and choose from. And that's exactly where you use the queries. And with all that, then we start using and creating actions. Before we look into the configuration of the actions, let's take a look at a few examples how these bits and pieces work together from a delegation perspective. So let's say you have a use case where you want to enable your HR department to activate out of office notifications when somebody calls in sick, maybe for a start. So if we go into the ScriptRunner from a help desk perspective, or from a person like in HR or another person that you want to delegate certain tasks to, that's what these people are working with. So this is the portal. Again, it's a role-based portal. Now we are a help desk user. So what we can do is we can trigger executions of scripts, if you will, that have been delegated to me. But you see, it's a graphical representation. I'm not talking about being on the command line and typing and running some scripts and typing in parameters. Each tile here represents a use case. And as you can see, it can be done. This can be for all kinds of use cases, all kinds of platforms. This really depends on what you want to delegate to this group of people. And if the users have use cases and actions that they use quite often, they can pin them. And whenever they log in, that's the first thing that they see. And so an action means use case or a runbook, if you will. And that can be, for example, coming back to this scenario from just now, an out of office notification scenario where you want to enable someone to just activate the out of office when somebody called in sick, or maybe somebody forgot to activate it and they went on vacation. So what you see here is, number one, you can provide some help to the user understand what this is all about. And then you see a couple of parameters. So I can pick and choose a user or users. I can select notification template, and I can configure the start and end date of the absence. And I can click on generate a report. Now, if I would switch to, let's say, Spanish, for example, we can see that this information, like the parameter descriptions, are changing automatically. This is, for example, something that is done, this comes directly from the underlying script. And as when we talk about the script, let's maybe take a look at the script in the background, and to see what the script is actually doing. So and just compare how this refers to the user interface. So here, number one, we have all this multi-language descriptions for the different parameters. And then we have, for example, because we have a date time parameter, this is why we automatically translate that into this date picker or date time picker, for example. So there are a lot of things that you can configure and you can manage from what you're doing in your script with parameters, for example. And also we can see that we have a bunch of mandatory parameters. That's why as long as I have not filled out every mandatory field, I will not be able to click on the run button down here. But now I've done everything correctly. So let's click on the button. And what now happens is that it's not the user who runs the script. It happens in the background. ScriptRunner is executing the script with the input from the user. While this is running, we can actually close that and come back to the result later on. And we can go to a next example. Let's say it's about delegating reset password in Azure AD or in Active Directory. Again, it's like the same idea. I have a couple of parameters. Now here I can select the OU, and then I see the users of this OU dynamically. If I'm changing to the US, for example, now I can see the users from this OU. So the idea is lead the user step by step. Now in this case, it's a two-step approach. If you have things like select the vSphere server, select the VM, and then select a snapshot, it can be 3 steps, 4 steps. The idea is lead the user step by step through the process, make sure they're doing the right thing. And talking about doing the right thing here, we are generating the password not automatically in this case. It's something that I have to type, and I have to follow some certain rules. And the thing is, as long as I'm not doing the right thing, this run button will be inactive. So if I go back, and because I have not typed in a special character, the run button is grayed out. Now again, let's take a look at the underlying script that does this, which is this one right here, which again, we have some parameter descriptions here. And now here in the param proc, we have a validate length and validate pattern. This is exactly what is being checked while the user is entering the information here. And only if everything is correct, then I can click on the run button. And now again, in the background, things are executed by ScriptRunner with the input by the user. Now, this is the interactive approach using the portal. Now we're coming back with a little plain text message here. If we go back to what we just did with the out of office, we could take a look at the report, and we can see that in this case, we have a nice little HTML message that comes back that tells us, yes, the out of office has been activated. And as a little fun fact, in the underlying template, we have used the end time variable, so to make sure that the text itself is also up to date. The thing that oftentimes causes some issues when people changing start and end time of the out of office, but they forget to check and change the text itself with the date. That's done based on a variable here as well. Now, what you can also do, if we go back right here, you can take each of these use cases, again, as long as it's done on PowerShell, with PowerShell, and integrate this into any kind of website. Could be your self-service portal where you say, okay, this is where I want to activate, this is where I want to make this available to my users, and you have the exact same functionality. And of course, the user has to authenticate, so we can check if the user is allowed to trigger this use case based on the underlying PowerShell script. Yeah, very, very easy. So again, also, for example, you want to allow some users, specific users, to manage VMs, to say, okay, I want to allow someone to start a new VM. And then here they see a list of VMs, and then they know, okay, they can start, they can restart, they can stop a VM. Or in another use case, let's talk about Azure. You want to allow people to create a new VM, but of course, it needs to be in the right regions and the right VM sizes. So that's exactly what you can do here. You provide a query that in the background makes sure that in this case, we're using West Europe, and we're only allowed to spin up VMs that are fitting to the use case and not the most expensive one. So again, queries help here to control, to manage what the users are able to do. And as I said, so all these use cases are really only limited by the fact and the question, is it possible to do it with PowerShell? And if the answer is yes, you can do and use this as we just looked at. So if we go into the configuration of one of these use cases, so let's take this reset password use case or action. Now, what you can see here is that you have an overview about which script is being used, what queries are being used, which systems we connect to, and what kind of delegations are already configured. If we go to the script section, we can see all the parameters of the script. And for example, like for the OU path, what we didn't see as a user is a text field where I would have to type in the information. Instead, we mapped this parameter to a query that comes back with the OU, and then here with a list of users, which refers always to the previous decision on our OU path. And then we see the new password parameter. And then here you saw as a user, okay, the decision if the user has to change the password on the next login was visible. If we don't want that, we just switch this to hidden and we save it. And that means if I go back to the use case from just now, and I'm opening the dialog again, the checkbox is gone, which means it's not visible to the user. The setting is as you want this to be used all the time, and that's why it's checked. The user doesn't have and has no chance to change this at all. And then here we look at our Active Directory target, and you can decide if you want to use Windows PowerShell or PowerShell 7. If you have functions, a library of scripts, you can preload them, and then you can start delegating, where we talk about Active Directory groups, Azure Active Directory groups, and based on the delegations here, this is how you decide if a use case, the tile is visible to a group of users or not. You have multiple display options here, again, for multiple languages. And based on that, you can start this delegation scenario. Then, of course, besides the delegation part and the interactive approach, you might have things that you would like to schedule. Another thing that, of course, you can do easily right here is say, okay, creating of reports. Okay, maybe you want to do it once in a while manually, but typically these are things or housekeeping processes that you want to schedule. So this is where you can get rid of your Windows task scheduler stuff that happens on multiple boxes. You can say, okay, I'm centralizing this right here. And you might have jobs that should run once a week or maybe twice a day or every 30 minutes. And then you can also activate the email notification right here. So you get information if something maybe didn't work. Besides that, what we see quite often and more often, step by step, is that users, customers using Teams to communicate and to push important information into specific Teams channels. Like this one here, it documents that this user, Tina, created this out of office, or here we had some VMware VMs stopped or started. So this is another nice way to get information across very quickly. And the third way of triggering these scripts, it can be done with connectors. So these are typically REST API connectors. So whenever you have a system that is able to talk REST, you can integrate these systems. And we have a wide variety of scenarios out there with SAP, with ServiceNow, with Jira, with SharePoint workflows. So whenever there is a REST API connection possible, then you can make this system, you can create an end-to-end automation. And so that means, just to show you that also from a technical perspective, because you can also trigger this just from a script. This is exactly what I'm doing right here. I am saying which action I want to trigger. I have 3 parameter names. I have 3 parameter values. And with this, I'm triggering this action in the background, which hopefully is going to work. We'll see. And even if not, we can see, we can use the reporting to find out why maybe something didn't work. So this will take a little bit, but it should be coming back in a few seconds, hopefully. And while that is running, what we can do, we can go to the monitoring part, which means you want to know what's actually what's happening right now and what happened in the past. So here you can see the manage your VM action got triggered just now. Ooh, okay. And if it would have been an interactive usage, we would have this nice little message, which we won't see right here. So this is coming back to the console here. Just comes back with, yes, the command has been executed successfully. That's the plain text message. If I would have been a user in the portal or in a widget, then I would have seen this nice little Giphy here, whatever. So the idea is you have all information available at your fingertips, like who triggered it. So here you can see it triggered by a web service connector. You can see all the parameters that have been used, including the ones that we didn't see. If we go to this one here, for example, again, you can also see the user, you can see the result, I can see the detailed report from the underlying PowerShell host. So all information is available here. And if you say, okay, I'm only interested in things where I had some issues, I can go into the mode where I'm only looking at the failed executions. And I can go in here and I can find out that, like, for instance, here, the connection to my VMware environment was not available because my VMware environment was down. So again, it's about being in control, managing everything that you can do with PowerShell on a central level, then trigger these executions either scheduled for automation, event-driven, or you start delegating these tasks to help those people, to junior admins, to line of business users, again, depending on the use case. And again, the limitation really is only, and the question is it possible to do this with PowerShell? And if the answer is yes, yeah, you can start using it with ScriptRunner. All right, so with this, to quickly sum up, what we looked at is it's about standardizing, automating, and delegating all kind of recurring tasks. It's about triggering these scripts interactively scheduled or event-driven, using and having a monitoring and a reporting piece that shows you in detail the past of already executed scripts, but also using the live monitor actually to see what's happening right now, something that you can use as well. And the underlying architecture is based on this centralized way of managing your scripts and modules, a secure way of managing your credentials. And for the interactive approach, of course, very important, of course, that we automatically create these web user-friendly web forms based on your underlying scripts. And so based on that, yeah, as I said, I think really PowerShell can become the cornerstone of your automation strategy. And yeah, would be happy to discuss if you have additional questions. I'm just looking at the chat right now, so we can talk about the questions that we just that we saw. Let me just see. Okay. Okay, so one question is, does the AI-powered script need internet connection? Yes, because we need to be able to connect to ChatGPT. What else do we have? Okay, 2 questions. I assume that, okay. Yeah, ChatGPT functionality can be disabled, of course. Well, number one, you need to have an OpenID key. So as long as you don't enter it into a ScriptRunner configuration, there's no way to use ChatGPT, of course. And also, it's quite interesting because you might know there is Doug Fink with his PowerShell AI module, which allows you to use PowerShell to directly interact with ChatGPT, which is very powerful, which you can also use in ScriptRunner in actions to say, I want to limit the way people can work with ChatGPT, and I want to control it and manage it in a central way. So that's another interesting aspect of it. And by the way, there was another ScriptRunner live session a few weeks ago. It's still on LinkedIn and it's on our YouTube channel. So you might want to check out because I specifically looked at the ChatGPT PowerShell ScriptRunner scenario. So that might be interesting for you as well. Okay, yeah, okay. Somebody experienced some choppy and problems with the live stream. So yes, it's being recorded. So you will see it. You will find it on LinkedIn and also on YouTube. Well spotted. So I'm not using HTTPS yet. So, but of course that's the standard. So I'm running it in HTTP, but of course the default is using HTTPS for obvious security reasons. Right. Okay. So I think, yeah, thanks, Michael, and thanks, Frank, for answering questions during the session. Yeah, so if you have any additional questions, get in touch with our team, get in touch with me. Very quickly, just show you again my contact information. But as you are on LinkedIn or YouTube, it will be very easy to find me or to find us. So yeah, would be happy to discuss more details and maybe use cases that you might have for automation. And stay tuned. There will be more ScriptRunner live sessions. We will have a webinar end of the month where we talk about Active Directory and ScriptRunner and PowerShell in more detail. We are going to have a very interesting Ask Me Anything session with Bruce Payet, also in September, where we talk about his days with the PowerShell team when they started creating PowerShell and the things that he's working on right now, which is based on PowerShell, but something new as well. So stick around for that. So yeah, with this, thanks a lot for attending, for your time, and wherever you are in the world, good evening, good afternoon, good night. See you next time. Bye.